Welcome to Global Vid, a podcast about original productions and international TV and film distribution. I'm your host, Eric Y. Lapointe, and we're about to learn how people in our industry are expanding their footprint and finding the right partners around the world. This show was created by NNow Global and is also available as an audio format on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast application. Welcome and Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to Global Vid. We just recently spoke with Tony Havelka, the President of Ameba, which was Canada's first kids VOD channel set up in 2007. So I'm thrilled to share this episode and make it my first of the 2021 year. Ameba is a children's video streaming service that was created out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's free with ads, but ultimately focused on a subscription-based model. The service is only available in Canada and in the United States via their own website, amebatv.com, as well as Amazon, TiVo, Xbox 360, Roku, Google TV, Cinemood, Xumo, LG Smart TVs, and more. After 13 years in business, this has resulted in over 10,000 episodes and 2,000 hours of children's programming. Let's meet Tony Havelka right now. Welcome, Tony. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Great. I'm glad to have you here. Welcome to the Global Vid podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look at your business. We just met only a few weeks ago, but when we did, I immediately realized I needed to get you on the show and to talk about your company, what you have already built, what you continue to build. And Ameba TV is based out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is amazing. So let's maybe start the show by talking a little bit about your personal story and how you ended up maybe first getting into starting to be an entrepreneur. And then maybe later on, we'll talk about your switch to the entertainment industry. But it seems like you've been an entrepreneur pretty much your entire career, maybe except for those first few years. You want to tell me a little bit about your story?
Yeah, first years out of university, I didn't have enough. I always had side hustles like doing, other work and stuff like that. But I was always working for a larger company. But then in 1992, virtual reality was just starting to become part of the tech side, and people were talking about it. And I sent away for a lot of information from a lot of the companies that were in there and got nothing back. And that's when I realized at the time, this is a market that's ready to explode because the people that are in it don't know how to service it. They're ready to talk about it, but when there's a request, there was nothing there. So I started a company called Liquid Image. We determined at the time that the head-mounted display side, so that the headset that you put on was the market we would go after. We created one of the very first VR headsets that was like commercially available. We were still building them by hand, but that's where it started.
And what year to tell people? Because 1992, you were building VR headsets.
VR headsets, and we were pushing them out into it was in the simulation market, in the military simulation market. We took a different approach than everybody else did. Everyone else was using these they're bigger screens, but two of them in front of each eye. We took one big screen and put it in front of the eye, just because we knew that in the military simulations that you just wanted a big field of view. That's what it was. It was all about distance, which we can't see stereoscopically anyway. It was about distance and big field of view. And that's what we gave them. And over time, we grew that business. That was still very custom, but it was a technology business. In 1997, we pivoted that business into something someone called Tech Gear.
Okay.
What Tech Gear did was it took the idea of this very interesting kind of high margin, low volume electronics business, body worn business, augmented reality, virtual reality, mediated reality, that kind of stuff, very specific, and said, okay, let's have one house that you can buy it all. We'll support it, we'll ship it, whatever you need. You can come to us, issue one PO, and get your entire lab outfitted. And that was huge for people because universities would have to put out like 15 different POs and work on the logistics of getting it all in. When you bought it through Tech Gear, you placed one PO and you got it. That was a big thing. And then you got the support. So if my tracker didn't work with my headset, it wasn't a bunch of hey, it's someone else's problem. It was always our problem. We also took a step back from the industry and we didn't build headsets anymore. We built the actual components for headsets. So if you wanted to make your own headset, you'd come to us and say, okay, I need a micro display. I need driver boards, some optics. We could provide a lot of connections to make that happen. So we took the design phase of headsets and went from years down to months for people. So that's really where we were. And then in 2000, I sold the company to a big cable TV test equipment manufacturer in the States. And we were part of that company for a good 5 years. And that was just when HD was coming online on the broadcast industry. And that opened our eyes to what was going on the technical side of broadcast. 5 years later, I bought the company back. We're like a small commando team that you push in to do things. So you want to get something done, we'll do it. We'll do it quick. We'll do it very inexpensively, and we'll get it done. This being part of a big company, they're like the police. They just, hey, we've already got all the plans. Everything's done. All the rules are made. Just make no waves. And it was good for us because we were heavily backed. We got a few patents on some combat ID stuff that we built. But other than that, it was more like, this isn't fitting. So we brought it back into our own company. And then we started sitting there going, okay, now what are we going to do? Because just doing the same thing over and over again is very difficult for us because we're a small team of really impatient people. We want to get stuff done. And that's where we started looking at YouTube at the time. And YouTube was starting to kind of pop up. And it was something that was very interesting to us.
But you were mostly thinking about offering back-end services for broadcasting. Did you imagine at that point that you'd be building Ameba, the subscription OTT channel?
No, when we started, we started looking at this stuff and we said, okay, how are we going to deliver? Because remember, at the time, this was 2005, 2006, delivery of a bit of information was hugely cost prohibitive. It was very expensive to deliver video or any kind of data.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was working with a company out of China to help build us a set-top box. We built our own set-top box. But the interesting part about the set-top box was we used BitTorrent as a dark net. So every set-top box talked to every other set-top box. We had storage built right into it. So back in 2007, we were already delivering HD content right to your TV free. We didn't pay one nickel for distribution of content because every person had a set-top box was delivering to every other person. So the more set-top boxes we got in the field, the faster and more robust the network was. So we used this kind of technology to our advantage at the time, and it worked quite well. So then it was more like, okay, so now that we can deliver video, which we knew we could do now, we could encrypt it, and we could deliver a UX that was somewhat usable. So people, it wasn't like the standard EPG, which doesn't really work well for VOD. So,
and just for those who don't because that's new to me, what does EPG stand for?
Like the electronic programming guide. So something that you'd see on regular TV, like channel 2 has got, this coming up. That whole linear part of TV was different now. Where broadcast TV could make you watch. If you want to watch something at 7:00, well, you have whatever it is, 300 selections at 7:00, but that's it.
Yeah.
With VOD, there is no 7:00. It just happens to be the time. It's what do you want to watch right now? And you can start that right now. So, and there's still time shifting and stuff like that broadcast was trying to do with TiVo and things that worked very well. But the VOD interface is much different. So once we got all that all straightened out, now it was like, okay, what content do we go after? You start looking at, some of the big stuff. And that was a very difficult part because you can't just, at the time, you always remember the time. You can't just walk up to Warner Brothers, knock on their door and say, yeah, give me your catalog. They just what catalog? We have 8,000 different catalogs. And how many millions of dollars are you going to pay us? And, and we're we're self-funded and self-capitalized to this day. We haven't taken outside investment. We make very shrewd decisions on money because it's our money. It's not someone else's money. So that's kind of where we were looking at. And then we started seeing that in the kids industry in both Canada and the US, it's more of an oligopsony. There's a very few number of buyers and a huge amount of sellers. There's so many people that have stories to tell and want to tell those stories and they, show them through their video, but there's very few outlets out there that would allow them to get to the audience. So that for us was our kind of at the liquid image stage was that moment of, this is a market that maybe he's ready for people to start getting into and servicing. So for all those people that broadcast said no to, or for all those people that broadcast said yes to, but they were done their cycle on broadcast, well, maybe Ameba could become that for them. And as a company, we were just starting to have kids ourselves. So we were really getting back into the idea of what does the kids entertainment market look like? Like when you get into your 20s, you kind of forget about it. You remember the good things about, you know, Saturday morning cartoons and all that stuff. What's happened now and how it has changed, and it's become a lot more commercial, and it's become some of the ads that they're showing during kids content on some broadcast networks like Christmas special or something. Some of the ads are quite inappropriate for kids. So that really got us kind of off our backside and said, like, let's make this happen. Kids seem to be a good spot, and here's some of the reasons why.
So let's now start talking a little bit more about Ameba. How was that first year like to say, okay, were you basically one of the first VOD channels in Canada, period, right?
Yeah, one of the first ones. Yeah. Like we are the longest running streaming service that's devoted just to kids. And that was a big thing. And early on, like there were other streamers that were there that we were kind of mimicking or trying to say, oh, we don't want to do that. Like we were taking the best parts of what we saw and made it into Ameba. But there's a lot of dead bodies on the battlefield right now. And there was at the time, like people that tried, spent millions and got nowhere because they focused just on one thing, and it was usually the wrong thing. And that was the technology. The technology was important, but that's not what drives audience. You know, delivering a quality product to the audience in a way that they want to watch it, that's the most important thing. The technology changes every day, and that can't be your focus. It has to be part of your offering, but to the user, to the viewer, it can't be. It has to be totally transparent. They don't care what processor you're running or how many gigabits of RAM you're running on your servers or what kind of encryption you're using. They don't care. They just want it to work. I press play, I want it to work, and I want to watch the show that I watch. So I think that was a very big thing at the time, why we started. We're technologists when you boil it down to what we are or who we are. We are truly technologists, but we also have that understanding through decades of working in the technology field that the tech is secondary to what the customer needs, and what the viewer wants. So that's what you have to go after. So the kids space has its own unique issues in that where a general purpose service can market to the mom and dad because they're going to watch shows on the service as well. So if you can say, hey, watch our great shows like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. Oh, we have a bunch of kids content too. It's a no-brainer. But for a kids-only streaming service, you have to appeal to the parent, get them to either bring out a credit card or allow their kids to watch it. And then you also have to understand that they're probably not going to be watching with their kids side by side again, and they're not going to watch it on their own. So it's only the child there that is now experiencing the service. So if it's not easy to use or it doesn't have the shows that they want right in front of them, it's going to be very difficult to keep them engaged. And if the parent sees that their kid's not watching it, they're not going to keep, allowing them to go to it. They're going to push them to another service. So it's those things that we've been fine tuning over the last, 12, 13 years.
Okay. And what were those first couple of years like trying to build this company?
Difficult. It's always difficult because you think you know a lot more than you really do. The first part of it was, it's all about catalog. So starting with the catalog, you think, oh, I should have about, at least 1,000 hours of catalog. Yep. Well, what's 1,000 hours of catalog look like? You don't know until you start putting it together and you go, 1,000 hours is a lot of hours. Why don't we just start with like 100? That's where it shows. And you have to find those people and keep growing. And you have to get people that, like the content providers, have to believe in you, say what you're going to do and follow up on that, but also pay them for it. Believe in your ability to pay them and your ability to do what you need to do. And a lot of providers at the time, and even today, don't have a lot of time to do the delivery. Like, it's not like, okay, yeah, you can go do it. You still need all your files, you need your artwork, you need your captions, you need all that stuff. They still have to go do that. Like it's a big production to get content onto a streaming service. Yeah,
because usually there's huge metadata files too that have to be created.
Yeah, meta. Like even though you might, because you have to describe your content as a service. we can't describe it. You have the best, as the content owner, you have the best idea of what it is. And that's your pitch to, on screen. So if you have bad metadata, that means that person is going to click on something else that has better metadata that describes what they want to see a little bit better. So that part of it is, we're getting better and better, because I think a lot of providers are starting to see the importance of proper artwork. Don't deliver just ProRes files to us, which are like big master files. We need mezzanine files, which are smaller but still high quality. Mm-hmm. It means moving it around is much easier. Like, it doesn't take a day to transmit it to us. It takes like tens of minutes to transmit that file to us. But as we get further and further down the line, a lot of providers are starting to understand, and distributors, and I think that was a big thing. But early days, it was very difficult. We had to find the right partners that could be part of the team that could talk the talk of the producer at the time. Like, a lot of them that have been around with us for the longest, well-established Canadian producers that were a little bit apprehensive. We found the right person to work with to kind of talk their talk, but also understand how we talk, the technology side. Yeah. And she got a few of the top people to really believe in what we could do, and they've been around with us ever since. I mean, that's a huge thing for us.
Do you want to name some of those companies? Because it sounds like they deserve some kudos.
Yeah, I mean, there's been those companies like CCI was one of the first ones, okay. Breakthrough. Those have gone on to further sell their catalogs to other companies, but they were there. Casablanca, they were early on. So these companies were very instrumental in starting us off, because they brought content that parents understood and knew. It wasn't just this what's this new thing? I don't know what this is. But they actually grew up with this content. So, and it's all award-winning content. It's not just, content that chases an algorithm. It's actually content that was produced to tell a story for kids and has been recognized as being quality content.
Because you have a lot of classic content on your platform, right?
Yeah, almost every piece of content on Ameba has won an award. That was a big thing for us. We're not finding content, again, that chases an algorithm because it can, generate a little more revenue for them on other streaming services. This is content that was designed to tell a story, understood their audience as children, told the story in a great way, and maybe has some, other redeeming qualities of, education, or, teaching about empathy, or teaching about something, an evergreen concepts. But those two have been recognized as telling the story well and in a professional way. And that's the other part too, is all of our content is professionally produced. Not that user-generated content is poor. It's just, that's not what we do. User-generated content is for other platforms. It's not for Ameba.
Was YouTube still kind of an influence, and were you trying to copy the YouTube model to a certain extent?
No, YouTube was one of those models that we were kind of scratching our heads going, because remember, at the time, they didn't have a monetization model yet. So we're like, how do they make money? Like, they're burning at, millions of dollars a month. We can't afford that. We don't do that. But you always have to remember that we always treat services like YouTube or Netflix as they're in the stratosphere. They're huge. I mean, they're well capitalized. They have different motivations to go to work every day. Our motivation was to make sure that we could continue to deliver a quality product tomorrow. Just constantly tomorrow, the servers are still running. It's there. We're making money, and we're delivering to our providers, and we're delivering a quality product to our audience. YouTube didn't have that because they were well capitalized at the time, because they were bought by Google, and they'd figure it out. I think they were more of a long play of one day we're going to figure out how to monetize this. And they had to put a lot of pieces in play. And keep in mind that even though we do innovate in a lot of areas, we too wait for these big services like YouTube and Netflix to come around and say, okay, we have a new way of doing things. Like, if it wasn't for Netflix, so it was when Netflix came and said, we're going to do streaming, all the industry pundits said, that's it for all you kids guys, you're done, you're finished. And we sat back, because we've gone through this at Liquid Image. We saw a lot of big name companies like IBM and Intel get into the VR space. Yeah. And we realized the second that they did it, it wasn't the death of us. It opened up more doors for us, because it validated the market, and it also gave us access to much cheaper tools and cheaper infrastructure. And that's exactly what happened when YouTube and Netflix came to the market. If it wasn't for like the Roku platform, that was like when Netflix came out with their streaming box, which was, Roku version 1, they didn't come up with that and educate the market, we would still be spending countless hours just trying to tell each individual parent what streaming's all about. Like it would be such a different landscape. Whenever we talk to parents back in, 2007, 2008, 2010, they'd still be like, what's streaming? Like, I don't understand that. Like, my kids are just watching, broadcast TV. That's fine with me. That's all it is. So we didn't have to do that education anymore. Netflix was doing it for free for us.
It's funny because one of my recent podcast interviews was with Brad Danks from OTT, and he pretty much said the same thing you're saying right now, which is Netflix paved the way, kind of also, I guess, motivated the entire industry to step it up. But in terms of your business model, like in the beginning, what was that like in the first 5 years? How were you approaching producers? Were you offering license fees or were you offering rev share deals?
At the time, we couldn't afford a business model that would give a flat fee. We saw too many services out there that were offering flat fees for catalog because that was just their next checkbox to get the next tranche of investment from their investment group. So it's like, hey, you need a catalog of 1,000 hours, and then we'll dump in another $5 million. Well, check there, it's done. And then they would end up overpaying for content, and the content didn't do anything for them, didn't generate enough revenue there. So it's not like we pioneered Rev Shares. That's not what it is. It's just Rev Share made a lot of sense for us to say, we need to start tying revenue to performance. So with broadcast, again, if you want to watch something at 7:00 on a certain channel, well, you have to watch what they put in front of you. You have one choice. That's it. With digital, it's you have all the choices. So now it's how does product A differ from product B for an audience member? Like some will have some value and some will not. So if they click on something, that is saying, that audience member values that piece of content. And at the time we were paying out, and the rev share was more like we were paying out by time. So as long as the clock was ticking, almost like you're in a taxi or an Uber or whatever, as long as people are watching, you're getting paid. And we were paying out about, 10 cents an hour, 12 cents an hour. That worked. But what was happening was we're starting to see a change in the way that providers wanted to get paid. They understood our model a little more. We understood a profitable model, and we changed that to proportional rev share. So what we do is we take the entire audience playtime and then divide that by your playtime. So let's say, that there's 1,000 hours of audience playtime. There's only 100 of yours. You get 10% of what we make because you've generated 10% of our audience. And then we split that. We do a rev share on that.
Okay.
And that's fair, and the hard part with it is, and we talk about it every day to ourselves, to our top providers, is rev share is expensive. It is completely expensive. Once you reach a certain size of company and a certain audience size, it becomes extremely expensive. But it always ends up in our meetings. Don't be greedy. If you're sharing your revenue with your provider and they're making good money on your service, there's no questions about they will always be with you. If they're kind of like, oh, I'm not making that much money, the big question to them is, why aren't you sending more people to your shows on Ameba as opposed to other platforms that do not pay as high? That's a really big thing. Once you start showing providers that just the odd social media post or a quick link on your webpage to point fans to say like, hey, you can find it on all these services, and Ameba is one of them, that drives so much more traffic and that generates more revenue for them. It's a direct correlation. But just sitting back and saying, okay, here's my content, go crazy. Yeah, you better be one of the top, 10% of content made in the world in order for that to happen, because your audience is big enough. But most content like that is already exclusive on other platforms. So, they have to start doing a little bit more promotion in order to generate good money. But the ones that do make a lot.
And are you still using a Rev Share model today, or have you switched at all?
No, we still use a Rev Share. Every one of our partners that have been with us for a while and we paid a lot of money to, we're like, yeah, we'd like to go to a flat fee and pay you kind of what you made this year. And they just sit back and laugh. They go, there's no way on this planet I will take a flat fee from you guys, because we keep growing every month and they see it in their revenues. I mean,
okay,
they've done what needs to be done. They've got all their links done. They've got their social media person, dropping a few posts every couple of weeks about, where they can find their content. And it's now part of it. And they're like, I can grow. Like my revenues grow, 5% a month. There, done. Why would I take a flat fee? All the costs have been done, like already incurred early on when they put the content on Ameba. So yeah, we love on our top end stuff. We'd love to. And now we're a little more sophisticated. Early on, we can't pick winners. We still can't pick winners ahead of time because we just don't know what people are going to click on. We can't force content on them. We don't know what they're going to click on. But once you've been on our service for 2 months, now I've got enough data to start predicting where you're going to be. So the more data we have on you, the better our prediction is. And then, yes, I can, after 2 months to maybe 4 months, now start predicting not only where you're going to be, but the value of your content. So if you continue on an existing trajectory, we can predict this is how much money you're going to make in 6 months, a year. Also, we can also predict the volatility of your content. So are you susceptible to advertising? Are you susceptible to further promotion? Are you susceptible for proper placement? That's all done through statistical analytics, and it's very accurate now. So we tend to promote content that is susceptible to promoting, and we don't promote content that's already kind of burned through its audience. So we let it kind of burn down a little bit, and then we watch that volatility number go up again, then we keep re-advertising it, or re-promoting it.
And back to Rev Share for a moment, that almost feels like a sales job to me, especially back in 2007. And even like a few years ago, I think like 2015, 2016, I was just kind of snubbing the idea of Rev Share. Like all these platforms coming up from all over the world saying, we're going to offer you money. You never know if you're going to get anything out of it, especially when they're new. And they're saying, well, we'll pay you a percentage, and then you have to deliver the content in advance. It costs money to deliver. How has that evolved over time? Because I feel like we are right now in 2020. I feel like we've finally kind of gone to a new mode where people are now a little bit more open-minded to it and even seeking it because they realize they're losing money by not being involved with digital OTT services. So how has that sales job, because you're not acquiring in the traditional sense, but you're actually selling the platform and selling the rev share, how has that evolved in those 13 years?
It's been a big selling feature. Like everybody will say, hey, I just want to sit on my hands and wait for a flat fee. And I kind of go around the world where certain parts of the world, like Europe, always likes to have a flat fee or an advance on royalties. Asian producers like to have just a flat fee, but we end up paying for the sins of others all the time because we've been around for so long. Like you said, you see a lot of services come in, go, hey, we'll give you a rev share, and then they flitter out and die because they just...
With your content too. They die and then they have your hard drive or your files.
Exactly. So those kind of things are some of the things that we pay for those sins. So people are like, I've already been on 10 other services that have paid me nothing. So the question is, we always ask them is, why didn't they? Let's dig deeper into there. Like, did you do this? Did you do that? Always think of us like a supermarket. Like if you go into the supermarket, get your product on a supermarket, it's not the supermarket's job to sell your product. It's your job to sell your product. The supermarket stocks it and delivers it and makes sure you get paid for it. Like that's kind of where we are. We'll make sure that your content is pressed out and pushed out in front of the person that wants to see it. We'll deliver it in a high quality way and make sure that it gets monetized. But when it really comes down to driving demand for a show, we don't do that. That's not our position. That is the job of a distributor and the job of a producer, because that's where, even though it's on our service, you can take your stuff off the service. Well, the audience moves with you. Like the audience is not proprietary to us for your show. Our audience is our audience, that kind of thing. So we're more the the traffic of the people coming to the supermarket because they already know the supermarket. They trust that we have good prices and good quality produce. But really, it comes down to if someone's looking specifically for, craft cheese and we don't stock it, they're either going to buy another kind of cheese and try it because they trust us, or they're going to go somewhere else and buy craft cheese. So that's really changed quite a bit, where we've matured a bit. Our content catalog has grown, where we don't have to take every piece of content that comes through our door. We vet it now. Like we push it through about 10 different questions that we internally ask, and we always have conversations about it. Is this content filling a hole in our catalog? Does it have evergreen? Will it be as interesting in 10 years from today as it is today, or as it was 10 years ago? Like, that's the most important thing for us, because that means that we'll have content for the long run and it stands the test of time. If it's just something like people are doing like Fortnite videos, are they going to be playing Fortnite in 10 years? Probably not. If you think of the games that were being played 10 years ago, you don't see them played anymore.
Well, so those maybe for nostalgic reasons, but
yeah, but even the platforms 10 years ago, they're dead. You have to dust off your old, GameCube or whatever it happens to be, and then run it off an old tube TV because your LCD TV doesn't have the connection. So those are the kind of things that we look at and saying that things that are more contemporary should be on more of a transient service like a YouTube, because it's designed for that. Sure, they might be there for 10 years, but your views start, they go up high, and then they just trickle off and then go away because your next one is coming, and then your next one, and your next one. That's how their service is built. Our service is built around do one ingestion, do it right, do it well. You won't have to worry about us ever again. When you have new content, well, then upload some more. But you don't have to be continually chasing an algorithm. The algorithm itself is based on the audience, not on the content.
And that's a tip for distributors to think about the future. And it's kind of a little bit of aha moment for me. Distributors are traditionally salespeople, right? They broker the deals for you, but they don't think about the marketing. And as we evolve in this new streaming world, it sounds to me like the advice that you're giving to people is you need to think about that marketing. If you sign on with Ameba, you're on, but you need to think about driving traffic. And of course, very potentially, if you're dealing with a distributor, let's say based out of Singapore, they're probably not thinking about the marketing in Canada on Ameba. Right. But they should be. They should add that element to it. So once they start doing these deals, well, it's not just, okay, well, we delivered, we're done, and now we'll just wait for the revenues to start coming in. If distributors are going to have any play there and add value in that pipeline, they're going to have to add the marketing, which is something the individual producers just won't have time to do. So that's maybe the future of distribution, is to think more and become more like marketers.
Well, they have to, in the sense that the old broadcast model, broadcast was still rev share, even though they paid up front. They just knew that if they had the content for 2 years, that's so many ad segments or promotional segments, they could make this much money. We'll give you 40% of that. That was your upfront, and the rest was for us. I mean, it's a rev share that they knew because there was a locked-in temporal thing. But also, the broadcaster did all the promotion, because the more people that watched, the benefit came directly to them. It wasn't on that 40% or whatever the rev share that went to the provider. It was all into their pocket. So they did the promotion. But things have changed now for streaming services. When you have content on a streaming service, the first thing I always tell people, you need like a website. It sounds all old school, but you just need a website that just talks about your show, because people are looking for it. They're like, that's my favorite character. Like, you always have to remember, no matter how obscure your content is, you're at least one person's favorite show, like at least one. So you have to have a website that talks about the show and talks about, where you can see it. Worst case scenario, like get a Wikipedia entry on the show or an IMDb entry on the show and start, clicking off to there, because then you can start, as a fan goes, oh, I remember this show when I was young. Where could I see it? Boom, you've got it. The second thing is have social media. With YouTube collapsing that ability to, or eliminating that ability to engage with your viewers, so the whole comment section is gone. you cannot reach your audience anymore. You have to find new ways to reach your audience. So you have to have a social media presence. Not that kids are on Facebook looking at it, their parents are, or their parents are maybe doing, Snapchat or TikToks with this stuff. You just always have to be relevant in their mind and in a way that potentially you can interact with them so that you can tell them where to watch more stuff, or they can ask you where to watch more stuff. And that always gets back to that web page, which is more of a kind of a static way to, relay that information back and forth. Yeah. So I think those are some of the things that distributors now must do, and maybe even providers, because sometimes distributors can be transient as well, in the sense that you'll have a distributor to help you with your launch, and then once it becomes catalog, you'll have a different distributor for that catalog. So maybe it has to come back to the content provider or the rights owner, whoever that happens to be, owns the website, the social media stuff, and then they just work with the distributor to augment it depending on how they are selling. I don't think you'll ever get rid of the distributor in the value chain, because they play a huge role in understanding how a provider thinks and how a streaming service thinks. And it's that makes the deals happen. And I think that's an important thing. Yeah. The hard part, I think, about when we deal with Rev Shares, I think a lot of distributors go, okay, my percentage is 30% of whatever I can bring in, like whatever their deal is. Let's say it's 30, but maybe it's 15. Okay, what if I get $1,000 a month out of these guys? That's $300 a month. That's $3,000. That's not even worth my time. I'd rather do a broadcast deal and be done with it. I think the hard part to that is, on a single scale, that the economics aren't there. But with digital, it's all about scale. You can't find one deal to do that. You need to find 1,000 deals to do that. So your 300 turns into 300,000 a month. Like, that's what digital is all about. The people that are making it, when you just look in the digital society now, the people that are making it understand scale. Like Amazon, they don't just fire up, one or two virtual computers to run, their Amazon cloud. They fire up millions of them because they know, they understand scale. And I think that's where distribution has to go to now as well, is you need to be able to deliver content effectively and efficiently so that you can achieve scale. And yes, those kind of hundreds of dollars a month for like kind of smaller catalogs or smaller content doesn't sound like much, but at scale, it can turn out to be a huge lucrative business.
And can we just maybe talk about YouTube again? And back in 2016, YouTube had, and we talked a little bit about this throughout this episode, but back in 2016, YouTube had that huge advertising issue they called it adpocalypse, where basically they had to start demonetizing some of the content, because what advertisers were finding was that, we're targeting a certain demographic, but we had no control over what content was being watched. So that demographic that they were reaching could have been watching hate content or terrorist content or whatever that might be inappropriate. Did you see any change in people migrating over to something that's safer and trusted? Did you see a boost in your business in 2016 during that crisis at YouTube?
Not because of it whatsoever. And that's the craziest thing. Like, when you ask a parent, and we do tons of surveys, you ask a parent about, do you want to be on a safe service or on unsafe service? Well, they first pick safe service. And it's like, what will you do in order to ensure that you are on a safe service? And they'll tell you all this stuff, but then you watch what they do. It's how we got into how we even introduced ad supported into our model. Like, when we started, we were very much subscription, ads are bad because of the experience we had. And in 2013, 2014, we started, getting people that had ad services looking for inventory, and they wanted to get us in. So we said, okay, let's do this and let's get in it in a big way. And we did. The whole catalog was AVOD and SVOD. The pitch was, hey, don't watch kind of all these ads for $4 a month, which is super cheap. $4 a month, get a subscription. Such an easy pitch because of all the things the parents said that they believed in and all that stuff. Well, it turned out that was the best thing for our audience, because our audience numbers shot up. Like, within weeks, we were like doubling every week. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. Ads were being played, all that stuff. It was cannibalizing our subscription model. And we started to get the numbers in from the ad guys. And it's like, hey, CPMs, like cost per 1,000 views, let's say $10, you make pretty good money. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're only getting ads every kind of 10th call that comes in. That's a 10% ad fill rate. So 10% of $10 is $1 CPM. Nobody's making money there. So while your costs are growing, your audience is expanding, well, your CPM rate is your eCPM, your effective CPM rate is just plunging. And I think that is some of the problems of working on that part of it, in that we then quickly found out after a couple of years of doing that when you're in the ad business with kids, especially, we move from being in the business of showing great content to kids in subscription to being in the business of showing ads to kids wrapped around content. And that was something that, again, at our core, we couldn't really stomach. We had to get away from that and saying that a majority of our revenue is now going to start coming from ads. And the only way we're going to make more revenue is by showing more ads, not by getting better content, but by showing more ads during that content. Mm-hmm. And that was just like, this is the wrong approach. So when you start looking at YouTube as a platform, that's all they're really worried about. Like now you can start seeing today, there's 2 ads in an ad pod all the time. So like overnight, they just go, okay, instead of 1 ad, it's 2 ads. They just doubled their ad push. That's huge. But for kids, like, come on, guys, like this is crazy. That adpocalypse was something coming that we all in the business, like in the kids side of the business, all had to deal with. And YouTube was kind of flaunting the law and maybe just working just to the letter of the law, like just as much as they could interpret it, but nothing more of the actual intention of the law. And then they got kind of trapped in that. And then just this last January, there was Copageddon, which again was YouTube working to within the letter of the law, not the true intention or where they should have been. Like we parents tend to want kids services to be more than just the letter of the law. They want them to be beyond that. They want to be safe, but it can't be just like, hey, we're a safe service. Of course you're a safe service. You're for kids. I mean, if you're not a safe service, like shame on you. And I think that's what happened and is what's happening with YouTube, especially since they understand that kids is a big market. It's worth addressing, but they still don't know how to do it within their mechanism. But as I've always said, YouTube operates at the stratosphere, and there's a large area of rarefied air, and then there's the rest of the market. And I think that's where we go. And people aren't like, advertisers aren't going, okay, we can't be on YouTube. Let's go on to these platforms. These platforms are still in the grand scheme of things, just too small for big advertisers. There's a big market that we would look at and say, if advertisers would be like big advertisers say, hey, you can pull from our advertising pool, very much like Google does. Like, you remember that when Google AdWords came out, they're like, you're selling AdWords for like a penny. You make a bid. Like, what kind of stupidity is that? But they knew that they couldn't price streaming TV. What's that worth? I don't know. Let the market determine it. So today it's worth a penny. Tomorrow it's worth $4 because someone's willing to pay that. And I think it's the same thing with advertisements. They've all got their VAST tags and all their tags ready and their creatives. We have the ability to tell them what show it's going to be playing against and on what platform. That marketplace to do that. And there are other great companies like Super Awesome, which we deal with to deliver kind of kid-safe ads. They are this intermediary market, but a direct line to those advertisers would be kind of the next step of democratization. And I think that's something that the industry has to look at, where instead of kind of looking down their nose and saying, oh, well, you guys can only do like whatever it is, 5 million ad impressions of my Lego ad every month. Yeah, that's you. But there's 5,000 of you out there, and that gets us the penetration we need and the audience we need at the time. So I think the people that understand scale are the ones that are going to benefit.
You're more focused on the subscriptions now. That's where you're going towards, but there's still that free option with advertising so that parents can get familiar with the platform. So what's the strategy now?
Yeah, so in 2019, we switched gears. So we did about 5 years worth of AVOD. We said, okay, here's how it works. We understood it now. We learned a lot. We learned that there are cycles to it, like that Christmas time, like right now, that you start looking at around like November to December, it's 100% ad fill rate. Ad rates are through the roof. Everyone's vying for everyone's eyeballs. So if you're not bidding high, you're not going to get played. Come like December 26th, there's no more ads, and then that starts picking back up again and, coming through the summer. But you can't make your whole business based on like 2 months of advertisements. So we've learned that. We also learned that we're not in the business of selling ads. So we can't get our head around, like, we should be putting like 6 ads in an ad pod. Like, that to me is insidious. It's crazy. You should have maybe 1 ad and maybe a pre-roll or a post-roll, maybe some mids if it's longer, but don't try to just inundate the viewer with ads just because that's how you make money. And we also realize that we're not in the business of being out and buying ads from like Lego. We don't have staff that are just out there. So if we have to deal with companies like Super Awesome, excellent company, and they are our go-to for our ads, but there's their overheads and their markups. So we're getting like less and less and less. So once we realized that, then we said, okay, we still need that free component because we see how it benefits some parents. It's a low friction point, like it's low barrier to entry. Come in, take a look at our entire catalog.
Well, it's part of your funnel. Get people in first, explore it, get to know it, and then they see your 3 pricing options, and you go, oh, okay.
Right.
Done.
That's it. That's all it was. But remember, like, the pendulum in the industry always swings. When we started, it was only about subscription. Then it swung to AVOD. And then when we got into it, I'd say it was kind of in between in the two of them, in between the kind of AVOD and SVOD. And now everyone's trying to swing to AVOD. Like, it seems to be kind of the only thing people are doing now. On the adult side, might be okay. But on the kids side, it's a bit, again, like I said, insidious because you're in the business selling ads to kids, not good content to kids with ads around it.
Yeah.
So our free kind of trial, we'll let you try it. First episode for free, no problem. You don't even have to sign up for an account. You have to do nothing. If you want a little bit more of a taste, just get a free account, an email. That allows us to do a few things. One, it allows us to send you, in the States, there's a law called COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act.
Okay.
And we have to conform to that. I mean, it's not like it's optional, it's mandatory. And part of that is to tell the parents. So just in case a child came to our website.
And that's the same law for YouTube.
Very much so.
Okay.
But the problem is, how do you identify that your sign-up person is a child or an adult? Don't know. You have no clue. There's no like fingerprint scanner. There's no optical. There's nothing. You have no clue. So what you have to assume is that it was a child that signed up. So now I have to get back to the parent and say, this is the data we're collecting, what we're collecting, who we're collecting it on behalf of, and all the time it's always us, and who we share it with. And things like, analytics, our analytics partner will tell you what we share and all that stuff. But that's so important because it checks that box of regulatory requirements. But then it also allows us to then remarket to the parents and start saying, like, if your child likes Stinky Foot Frog, they would like these too. Why don't you try that out? Or here's a special we're running, or whatever it happens to be. It allows us to have this kind of two-way communication ability right now with parents, because we can't really communicate with the child. We have to communicate with the parent. So by getting that sign up, it's still free. We don't ask for a credit card. We ask for nothing. We can start showing value in the service. We can start allowing the parent to understand the service a little deeper, because they're not, again, the child's the one that's kind of going through it. They're not sitting with the child and doing that all the time.
Yeah.
Some do, depends on the age of the child. But as they get a little older, they're a lot more independent.
Well, and if it's like our household, it's probably the child saying, can I download this? Can I sign up? Okay, I'll use your email, mommy.
Exactly.
And there you go.
So we wait a longer period of time. So it's not like if a child, downloads and then checks the email right away. Okay, yeah, there. We do send a confirmation email so they can kind of think like, I'll confirm it there. I can erase it. Now I'm on. No, like a couple days later, we'll send you this email so a parent can go, wait, what's this all about? So Once they have that, then the pitch starts of, it's really all about getting into the subscription model. We're only $4.99 in Canada and $3.99 in the States. So it's a really easy pitch. We offer discounted for 1 year and 3 year subscriptions. And most people, since we started offering that, because that came from a few parents, they're like, I've been with you for a couple of years. Can you offer us like a better discount for like longer terms? We're like, sure, like let's figure it out and let's make it happen. And that is a big thing because people look at it and at like $19.95 or $19.99 for 1 year, it's like a no-brainer. Like it's under $20. They click it. It's the majority of our of our subscribers there. And that has to do with churn. Like our churn rate is so low in subscriptions because we have a lot of one-year subscriptions that are just constantly going, yeah, okay, another $20, no problem. And especially during times like COVID and where kids are at home all the time, $20 for the full year is such an easy thing for parents to absorb. And they're getting great value out of it because it's not just on the web, it's on all of the platforms that we're on.
Let's talk about that churn and that turnover of clients, because obviously that 1 year offering, which is a great deal, keeps people in. And that's the most important part. And, I remember doing a study on this about 3 or 4 years ago, because for another project, we were looking very closely at, what should we do if we were to build an OTT channel? And then we started looking at all the business models out there. And Netflix had a great churn rate as well, obviously, and still do, because they're providing constant value and providing new shows on the go. Then you had these other properties that were making huge money but had huge churn. The best example is the World Wrestling Entertainment Organization that had a churn rate of over 100%, because basically people would sign up to watch a major event and then sign out. So tell me about your churn rate and how low it is compared to other industry players.
So our churn rate is under 3% every month because of a few things.
That's
one, just
amazing.
our demographic, our models, and that we stopped relying on advertisements as our main source of audience. The big thing with an advertisement is, if it's ad-based, you have no real commitment to the platform. You're in, you watch what you want to watch, you go out. The metric is more like how many unique users you have. Those unique users rarely talk about kind of your cohorts. Like, are these unique users the same people that have come back last month and the month before and the month? They don't know. They're just like, this is my unique users every month, because they fully appreciate that in the ad side, there's no connection between the audience and the service. It's more the content. So if the content's somewhere else, they'll watch it somewhere else. You just happen to be on their path of today. With a subscription service, you have a commitment now. Like, you made the commitment to say, like, I'm going to pay for a month, a year. I'm going to get my value out of it. So you come back to the service. So I think those are some of the things that keep us low in the churn, because people are starting to see value in what they're getting. And as we grow, like every day, we're always adding new content. They're seeing that there's new titles. We're trying to always bubble up titles that you want to see, so that now, instead of saying, oh, where's a good show, the stuff that's bubbled up to the top is stuff you go, oh, that looks pretty good. We're working with providers to start getting better kind of what we call click targets, so that it's not just the thumbnail on the carousel. There's other kind of character carousels. We have hero tiles, superhero tiles, all those things to try to figure out ways when people are watching, how does it make it easier to get them to watch shows that they want to watch? Like Netflix has got, their recommendation engine, but now they've also started like, just play something. I don't know. They've got this analysis paralysis because they've got such a huge catalog that people are like, I don't know what I want to watch. So they'll make the decision for you. We're not at that level yet, but we think that we need to be presenting content in a way that makes it easy for people to click. And that's why the churn rate is so low. And we also understand that people just age out of Ameba. Like, you start when you're 2, earliest, and you kind of by 10, you're already onto something else.
Let's maybe conclude this episode by talking about what's next. We're 2021 now. What is next for this year and for the years to come for Ameba?
What's next for us is always, we look at trying to always tweak our offering, our growth, and what's available for our audience. We listen to our providers. They're always giving us feedback on kind of models they want to see. We've just rolled out new deal memos that will, give them access to better revenue streams and other different revenue streams. So we started introducing FAST, that free ad supported streaming, so that it's a linear streaming channel. We found out ways to monetize those. Nice for them. So new types of monetization streams are important.
Okay.
And then for our audience is always new catalogs. We're always, dipping into great catalogs that are maybe in unconventional places, like after MIPCOM this year, which was an interesting MIPCOM because it was virtual. And but we made great connections with providers off in Russia, who have heard no many times when they tried to come to Canada and the US, and just like, nope, not interested. And they have amazing artists and amazing stories to tell. And lots of it's already dubbed in English. So we're starting to tap into those. That's the kind of stuff that we're looking at, is trying to find stuff that, instead of just bringing it to YouTube because that's the last thing a providers just like they've kind of thrown up their hands. They said, okay, I've talked to Netflix, I've talked to the broadcasters. They've all said, no, we'll just put it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And we're trying to say like, no, don't put it up. Put clips on YouTube. You must be on the world's largest video search engine. You must be there. YouTube must play a role, but it can't be your only role. So people who are putting their whole stuff up there are missing out on massive amounts of revenue because services like ours on a CPM basis pay way more than YouTube. So what you should be doing is putting clips up there and then saying, find us on all these other services. So instead of like and subscribe, that's important for their search engine. But what we're trying to do is get to most people, most providers to say, here's where you can find us on other services. And, we're one of those services. That's really, really where we're trying to focus on is trying to make it easy for audience members to watch shows, be on as many platforms as we can, even though being on a platform doesn't sign up one more subscriber. So if we're on, new platform, new TV comes out, and we're on there, not one more subscriber is going to sign up because of it. But if you're not there, you potentially missed that brand impression. If they wanted to watch it on this new whiz-bang TV and you're not there, they're going to go on to something else. So as a technology company, we always evaluate new platforms and try to make sure that we're on the next kind of best one. But that's really what's in it for us. And we just keep our head down. We have no aspirations of being Netflix for kids. I mean, that shouldn't be in the kind of the streaming services vernacular, in that there's no way you could ever become that. You do not have the capitalization. You do not have the marketing power. You do not have the people that would allow you to even say that you're, Netflix for kids. We understand where we are in the position of the market and continue to grow there. I mean, we're happy with our growth. We're more than happy with our growth. And we continue to grow that way.
Okay. One more question for fun.
Yep.
Why is there an O missing in the word amoeba?
Why an O?
Pardon me?
Why an O?
Oh, with the word amoeba.
I don't know. It just came to this. Amoeba was, we were looking for different names for the company early on. And we had a zillion different names. And this was just one of the ones that, when you talk to a lot of people with different accents and different things, they could say it, they could understand it. Amoeba sounds like, the single-celled organism that'll eat your brain. In a way, it's kind of like that, but in a more nicer way. And it was just easy for people to say. We had a whole bunch of different things. And we tried to stay away from any kind of, and sometimes to our detriment, but kid or vid or that type of stuff, any kind of things like that. We tried to be a little bit different. In the long run, it's paid off. We've got a lot of people saying, it's good design, a good name, it's easy to say, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we went with it.
Okay.
But you should see our board. I mean, it's got 1,000 different names and treatments, and we ended up going with that one.
I think the reason why I asked is because I kept writing in the O. I'm like, no, take it out. All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tony. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I wish you the best of luck this year and in the years to come.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes today's episode of Global Vid. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Ameba and Tony Havelka for today's interview, as well as Amber Goodwin and Aaron Ross for our theme song. Until next time, stay safe, everyone.